Make sure we're going there. All right.
You know, this revolution is filled with so many ironies, really. First, you tell us that it is manly to keep your word, right? If you are a man, you keep your word. And now all of the black people in this country are demanding, and even the black people in the whole world are demanding, is that you keep your word. You told us we were free. Well, then show us that we're free. You told us that there is justice, equality for all in this country. Well, then stick to your word and let us see the justice and equality for all. Or else admit to us that you're not a man, you're a word, you're afraid of us, you're afraid to give us equal stand. You're afraid that if you give us equal ground, that we will match you and we will override you.
It's good, family. We are just sharing a couple spaces here. Hopefully the audio is clear. I know we should be good on Facebook. There's a link going up on Twitter. And I don't really know if the YouTube link caught. So if anybody comes in through YouTube, I appreciate it. I'm getting moving real soon here. I'm just trying to get this all shared out. It's a very important discussion today. We're not going to be here all day, but it's a very important discussion because if we're going to talk the talk, we got to walk the walk. We can't run from people because that just creates more problems. But I appreciate anybody that is checking out the feed on Facebook, Twitter, or maybe YouTube. I got an important discussion today because I wanted to talk to somebody on the other side. We talk about policing and we talk about the judicial system. We got to talk to those people as well. We can't just talk about them. We've got to talk to them. So I've got some questions that I want to ask someone who is running for Washtenaw County Circuit Court judge. And they have an extensive resume. I literally have seen the resume. So I am encouraged what this individual has to offer. You know, as far as the candidacy, I think it's a no-brainer, but people have to really understand who this young lady is. And she's from our village. She is firmly planted in our village and she is active in our village. So we just want to get into talking with Mrs. Marla Linderman Richelew, and I'm going to bring her up, and hopefully I said that correctly. I did not butcher her name. Counselor, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. Hopefully everybody else who is checking in can hear us as well. I appreciate you doing this again. We tried yesterday, but I was unsuccessful because I was trying to actually do it from this, you know, which I do most of my lives from, and I've brought people up on but for some reason, Facebook has decided to change some things around, and I get it. I understand change, but I didn't understand it just for that live. So I appreciate you being able to do this the very next day and to get this taken care of. But Marla Linderman Richelew, she is a civil rights attorney. And I think it's an important thing to have that type of background approaching the bench and trying to be a judge, because you have had to have seen things from all angles. And one thing I have learned about civil rights attorneys is that they have much more depth into litigation as far as from the humanistic side than some other type of lawyers. But before I just start stealing all of her thunder and start saying what I think, I would really like Marla to really use this as a platform as she continues campaigning for Washtenaw County Circuit Court judge. And I want to know what led you in the direction. And first and foremost, I'm sorry, how are you doing? We talked backstage, so I better let me talk like we haven't talked before. How are you doing today, Marla?
I am doing just well. Thank you.
That is good. That is good. Okay. I hate when they do that on TV.
My
Yeah.
today. So, yes.
Okay.
I'm color coordinated, I can tell.
Gotcha. Okay. I just feel like sometimes I'm not trying to ever be like a TV host or anything, but I hate when they act like they don't talk to their guests or they haven't spoken to their guests right before they got on camera. I do the same thing sometimes. I get into the whole motion. We've already had like a several minute conversation because I was basically trying to get this right today. I didn't want to look stupid again.
We were just trying to value everyone's time. So we were doing the sound check and making sure everything worked. So
that's it. Trying to be professional here. But I want to know, and I want other people to know, because it's not the most lucrative fashion. And when you think about lawyers, a lot of people do practice law for the money. They practice because they love the field, but a lot of people you see, they go for the bag. And I want to know what took you, or why did you go into the direction of civil rights litigation?
So there's many different moments in my life, but the very first moment was when I was 7 years old.
Okay.
I attended Southfield Public Schools, and I was a hot lunch kid. So every day I'd get hot lunch, and the story is so vivid. I can tell you exactly what I ate that day.
That's what we're here for today. What did you eat that day? I want to know myself.
It ends up being a big important moment. So I had my burrito and mashed potatoes, and I finished my lunch, and I threw it out like you're supposed to, and I came back to my table, and I put my head down like you're supposed to. That was what we were supposed to do. Next thing I know, the lunch lady is screaming at me, like, "You shared your lunch with Brian Ribbiott." And Brian Ribbiott is still one of my good friends.
I'm sorry. Hold on a second. Somebody yelled at you for sharing your lunch?
I swear. And he's like, she didn't share. Like, he's backing me up. But you have two 7-year-olds and this lunch lady, I don't know. She's like, "You didn't come through the line. I don't remember you." And I'm like, so now it's gone from sharing to now she thinks I've lied. So now she thinks I'm lying. She thinks that that Brian's lying. And I'm still not super worried because I know my teacher likes me. I was one of those kids that was a little bullied because I was the teacher's pet. So I'm thinking, I'm going to go talk to teacher. She's going to know I'm a truth teller. We're all going to be good. And of course, she went with the power, right? She didn't believe the 7-year-old. She believed the adult. And next thing I know, I'm in the hall and I'm missing recess. And I've never had anything like this happen before. And no one would listen to me. No one would hear my voice. We had these silver lines that we had to walk on when we went to like the lunchroom or gym. We were supposed to walk so straight. And I always try to walk so straight. And so I'm feeling the silver line, and I'm like thinking, if this could happen to me, it could happen to anyone.
Right.
And I made myself a promise. I know this sounds so silly, but I made myself a promise that I was going to make sure that no one was ever treated this way, that everyone would be treated fairly, and that their voice would be heard. And this moment, like, I remember exactly what I was wearing. I remember people who were in the room. It was just one of those moments in life that you stick a feather in it and it just guides you for the rest of your life. And throughout life, I've had other experiences just like that until, even recently, where I am a civil rights attorney and people are calling me because they're being racially discriminated against or sexually harassed or, just really horrible stories. And universally, they start apologizing to me for calling me. I'm sorry. I'm not someone who sues people, I don't do this. I'm not this kind of person. And this realization that people do not feel like the courts are there for them.
Sure.
If they have to apologize for standing up for the right to be treated as a human, that has to stop.
If you're at the bottom, if you're perpetually at the bottom, though, you actually feel like it's a bother to impede someone and their progress, even though all you're trying to do is progress. You're trying to get up off the bottom. So you actually excuse yourself to take them away from their life to help you. I totally get it.
But it's horrible. It needs to change. We need to not make people feel like they're in the wrong for standing up for what is right. So, there's been many moments in my life that have kept me on that path, but it started when I was 7, when I realized that it didn't matter if you were the teacher's pet. you could still be treated unfairly. And if you could be, imagine those people who the teacher didn't like.
Absolutely.
And that was not okay.
Absolutely. And with that type of awakening at 7 years old, I'm sure you had your moments to where, you might have not been so philanthropic in life, but naturally you were a giver. You learned right then you were a giver, and someone actually made you feel bad for being a giver. So you have to see the other side of the coin at such an early age. I mean, at 7 years old, that's kind of awakening. I mean, I've experienced some things. At 10, I was told that I was going to be in jail for life for killing somebody by the time I was 18. I was told that at 10. I was told that by my 4th grade teacher, by the same teacher who at the end of the school year, realized, I mean, I never said I'm a genius, but he realized I was advanced. And what he had told me, it was only because he couldn't control me. And he couldn't control me because I would finish my work and I would do things and I would act out and I would disrupt the other kids. But I wasn't not doing my work and I wasn't being disrupted. I was being disrupted because I didn't have anything to do. When they gave me more to do that challenged me, it all calmed down. Now, granted, he never went back and apologized for telling me I was going to be a lifetime prisoner. But it was one of those things that was what he had in him. So I learned that at an early age. That was what he had in him when he couldn't control a 10-year-old child. And it was only based on the fact that I just didn't have enough to do. Right. So his level of education only took him to say that I was going to be a murderer, and really I just needed to have more work. And he wasn't supplying that, so therefore I disrupted the class. You yourself saw somebody in need, you provided the need, and then you get in trouble for it. It just doesn't make any sense. But as we know now as adults, that's kind of the world we live in.
Yes, those in power seem to be able to make the rules, and oftentimes we know they're not equitable, they're not fair. People don't start out at the same place. It was interesting when you and I were talking. Mm-hmm. You started talking to me about sanitation workers, mm-hmm. and I actually stopped you and said, "Wait, no, I know what sanitation workers go through because I represented them when they've been discriminated against or illegally terminated." And mm-hmm. I've had to go and understand exactly what they do and what they're put through. Right. And, it's when you do the kind of law I do, you really, there's something wonderful about getting to meet so many different people from so many different walks of life and having your eyes open often, because I don't care how open-minded I am or how much I love my fellow humans. Mm-hmm. I don't have every experience in the world.
Sure.
So there is that beauty. There's also the horror of knowing how many people can't see people.
Right.
They can see things about the people, mm-hmm. and they judge based on their experiences versus understanding that each person is their own brilliance.
Right. We are obviously a little bit different because we're able to sit here and have a conversation about some things in general and go into in depth, but the people that are in power, a lot of times, I think they more or less fall into power versus earning that power. So they really don't know how to deal with that power or delegate that power. So they wield and go at everything, just 100%, where sometimes it might only take 72% of you or 66% of you, but you go at everything at 100%. And a lot of times that will run right by what the actual need is. And I think we've seen that like with policing. I am definitely never going to be one of those people that's going to say defund the police, because I totally believe that we need law enforcement. I also believe that we need well-trained law enforcement. And I think there needs to be continual training of law enforcement. I don't believe you can go to a police academy or, say you get your bachelor's degree in criminal justice and you go to police academy and then it's over from there. I don't believe you can be an efficient cop for the rest of your life. I think you need to acquire and continue training, because you're not going to just have every situation presented to you as a law enforcement officer the same way. So you need to have different levels, of empathy, as it were, dealing with whatever you deal with. And I don't think we have that out there. Same thing goes with attorneys. For a civil rights attorney, you have to have multiple levels of understanding. not just about law, but people. And when they come to you, you have to be open-minded, one, but you've got to meet them truly where they're at. And unfortunately for civil rights attorneys, you're generally meeting people when they've been struck, when they've been knocked down in some way, systemically, possibly physically. So you're having to defend and be somewhat of a caregiver, a nurturer. You've got to help them that womb feel. How do you do all of that and be an efficient litigator? Because I take a lot of stuff personal. So I know as an attorney, you can't take things like really personally, or you'll just be pissed off all the time. So how do you get that balance, being a civil rights attorney and just not just being all out pissed off all the time?
Well, there's many ways you can look at the world. And if you're just pissed off, then you're not going to get anything done. So you just have to keep your eye on what do you want to achieve. Okay. And you need to make sure. There are some of my clients who will never leave my heart. And they touched me in ways that they will always be there. However, to be their advocate, I can never stop seeing both the good and bad of their case. Because if I don't plan for both, then I'm leaving them open for attack. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make sure that I continue to see their case and start from the beginning. This is what's good about your case. This is what's bad about your case. And what's good about your case sucks because it means that you've been treated horribly. Okay. So I have to always make sure that I keep my eye on the prize, and that is of helping them, of getting them justice, and making it as right as possible, because the law is not very equitable when it comes to civil rights, right? So I do education, I do fair housing, I do employment, I do voting rights, I do help people who are incarcerated, right? I mean, so really this huge gamut. But in the end, I can give them, if they've lost money, their money, maybe. I can give them maybe future damages, and I can give them emotional distress damages, which we'll talk about in just a second, and then attorney fees. There is not one word in there that talks about actually restoring or equity. As a matter of fact, while you can get someone put back in their job, it's something that the law does not push for, because you're putting them in a bad situation. Right. So there is very little restoration or rehabilitation there. And so that is very frustrating, because a lot of times we're just trying to go and change the employer by hitting them in the pocketbook. And money does not ever fully restore someone. I mean, it's great if you have money in the pockets and everything, but no one would ever say, hi, I will take $200,000 to allow you to call me the worst names ever and take away my human dignity. People just don't, we don't do that. But we have such a low value on people's emotional distress. It's very frustrating. I remember I had this case, it was in Washington County, a whistleblower, and it was a gas station where they were polluting not just the gas station, but into the actual ground, so that the gasoline was sitting there and turning into benzene, which is a cancer-causing agent. Could cause cancer, does cause cancer.
Yeah. There's no will. It does cause cancer.
The Department of Agriculture's involved. It was bad. And I remember we won at trial, and I had these horrible pictures of this. It was just gross. It was just gross what she was having to work in. And the jury gave her like $17,000 in emotional distress damage, which is like, what? Now, what was worse is I remember the foreperson coming to me and saying, we felt for your client so much. Like, we really cannot believe she had to go through such horrible things. And I'm looking at them going, but you said her emotions were worth $17,000. Like, how do you value someone's emotions that way? One of the things I always talk about is you cannot, in these cases, value the emotional distress based on the economic damages. It seems like you would, but that means that the more money you lost, the higher your wage was, your emotions are worth more. Like, that's not right.
It's usually the opposite. Like, you get people that, make a ton of money. They really don't care that much about the money. They actually, they want to be made whole again. they want their sanctity back because they've already got the money. But if you get them a big check or whatever, okay, but it's really not about the money. It's really about their good name, and they want to move forward.
Well, and also they are less likely to be about to lose their house or be in such financial stress that now we're looking at divorce because there's so much, anxiety and depression that no one's at their best. I mean, one of the things I don't think people always realize is how tied all the different areas of law truly are. Let's say you're fine, everything's good, you have a great life, and boom, you're in a car accident, right? And you went and got that newer, cheaper car, no fault, which you should not do.
Right.
And so now you are hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and you need medical care. And now you're waiting for the insurance company to say whether you get your medical care. And now you're living in pain. And now you're about to lose your house. And now your credit's killed. And now you're supposed to try to find another job when you are still in pain. It just keeps cycling.
Right.
And you see this in so many different ways, that it ends up, unfortunately, with someone having to go and get on government help, or someone who ends up in the criminal justice system because they lost their house and now they get arrested for loitering or whatever. There is like this pattern that we see that so many different inequities just feed into other problems. So I see you have a great guest.
you have a diverse background, obviously, with law. Your resume is lengthy. You've traveled in so many different directions, and obviously, like you said, civil rights litigation is, to me, it's probably very rewarding, but it seems really thankless on so many levels, because you probably go away feeling like, I wanted to do more for these people. Even though you may have did everything you possibly could do, you wanted to do more. Well, with that resume, now going into being a judge and having all of those levels of expertise, how do you take from being that compassionate litigator to being someone who's not really known to have a lot of compassion, which are judges? Judges usually are just very straightforward, direct. They may have compassion, but maybe the ones that I've experienced in my life haven't had a lot of compassion. I guess I've had a couple that have really spoken to me where I felt like they spoke to me like a man. But then some they were very condescending from hello. How do you take what you have? Because I've never spoken to someone who's been on the bench like yourself, and maybe they were like that at the beginning of their career and they kind of hardened up, or, that their skin thickened. But how do you take what you've done out here in the field as a civil rights litigator and make that go over to the bench, but still come out with that same type of fervor and that same compassion, for everybody that steps before you?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
What I would say is this. You start off with me being a civil rights attorney and handling all these different cases and criminal cases and, working with family courts and the civil courts. I've never stopped there, right? I've always been part of other efforts to try to change the courts.
Okay.
Right now I'm on the State Bar of Michigan's Courts and Civil Procedure committee, for example, where we're trying to go and make sure that the rules are more equitable and more fair, that we're including more people. So I'm already involved in those efforts. And we are seeing that even our legislature is starting to understand that what we need, instead of punishing courts, is problem-solving courts.
Sure.
And that is something that I plan to try to champion. I don't understand why every single circuit shouldn't be trying to get every single tool that the legislature has given us and then continue to go back to them as we learn to try to make it better. If we can have a business court in every court, we can have a mental health court in every court.
Absolutely.
So I think I think you have to just continue to remember that there are no cases. There are only people in front of you.
Right.
And that every single day, you are there not because you're powerful or not because you're cool. It is not about you. It is
Right.
never about the judge. And it's
Mm-hmm.
the judge, in my mind, well, obviously they get to make the rules,
Mm-hmm.
should have the most minimal role. They should be listening. They should be hearing. They should be questioning. They should be keeping track of things, right? One of the things that I think shows who I am is years ago, Washington County had this mandatory case evaluation meeting. So
Mm-hmm.
what it is you have attorneys who sit on these panels and say how much they think the case is worth.
Okay.
It's really important because if you didn't take that amount, you had to get at least 10% better at trial than that amount,
Okay.
or pay the other side's attorney fees from there forward.
Oh, wow.
Right? So here you are, a victim of discrimination, and you get like a $75,000 award, but your case is worth more like $300,000.
Right.
Do you take the $75,000 so you don't have to worry about paying their attorney fees? Because you never know what a jury's going to do.
Right.
So these panels were important. I show up. There's, I don't know, somewhere between 80 and 100 people. I think there were 6 females and 3 people of color, of attorneys who are deciding these cases, who are bringing that viewpoint, right? So now we have all these white males. I left that room. I got on the phone with the State Bar of Michigan and the president at the time and said, how is this possible? In Washtenaw, right? We're considered to be pretty liberal and progressive and inclusive.
And when you say people of, you said women, you said people of color, correct?
Yes.
So now is that black? Because I always have to distinguish, because they use people of color with so many different ethnicities now. So were we speaking about Black Americans?
I believe that they were all black. I have to tell you, like Elaine Washington, I feel confident about knowing.
Absolutely. I'm confident that Elaine is black, yes.
But I'm always worried, just because someone's a person of color, of a certain color, to say that they are just one race.
Sure.
So I'm not sure, and I can't remember exactly who those people were. I did write an article, so I know, I'm pretty sure my numbers are right.
I just wanted to make sure that we were talking about an Indian, say a Brahmin Indian,
anyone who, when I say there was only 3 people of color, I'm including whether they were Indian, Native American, Asian Pacific, Hispanic, as far as I could tell, and I believe that they were all African American, black. Got it. But because I called and I'm like, what's going on? They're like, it's, we just can't get them to sign up. We're not getting people to sign up. I'm like, well, then we need to do outreach. We need to make sure people know that this is a problem and that they're needed, because they don't even know that there's a problem or that it's needed. So one time in a room, I'm on the phone already. And I think that really shows my heart. When I see a problem, I try to fix it. I can't always fix it myself. And I'm not going to say that I can fix the world. Right. No one can do that. And anyone who says to you, I'm going to make it better 100% is playing you. Sure. Right. This is a huge problem we're dealing with in Washington County and the world. And we all need to work together. The point is that I'm not just willing to work on the bench. I'm willing to work after hours off the bench with my community, trying to get input, because I don't have all the answers. Sure. The people, we talked about this, where we find everything is in the strength of the people. And I think we get caught up so much into the system itself, but the system is generally created by very few people, but the people that are most affected by the system are the public at large. So if you don't get out and work within the community, which I've seen very few judges do, you don't really know what's going on. If you just sit perched up on the bench and case files just continue to come in front of you and you continue to dispense them, I don't think you really see the climate out there. I believe that even with policing, I believe that once someone goes off the street, I think they should be made to go back into the street every 6 months, every year, whatever it is, and roll out, put the full uniform on and patrol as they once did as a full-time officer, because you lose touch of what's going on out there. And as a judge,
you may lose touch on what's happening in the climate of your community, in the climate of your village of Washtenaw County, if you never dig into the community. Now, that kind of goes right to my next question, because I know you're firmly dug in. You are a PTSO president. Okay. I don't know how you have the time, because we've talked about your schedule, and I've had to catch, you weren't even letting me go between the pylons. You were throwing the pylons at me, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna get there. But once we finally got this set up, I was like, how do you even do this? But you are PTSO president for Skyline High School. That is a diverse community. Mm-hmm. Okay. You're within a diverse community of Ann Arbor. Being elevated as circuit court judge, you've seen things from obviously the juvenile stage, because you're dealing with that. You have children. So I don't think a lot of these people that are in your position to be elevated see some of the things that, because they're not heavily involved in the school system, which is, when we talked before about the school to prison pipeline, you're firmly entrenched in that situation, which we need to, obviously, from my standpoint, it needs to stop, because I still feel that we're going through that right now. I think kids right now are being either set up to flat out succeed or flat out fail. There is no middle ground. You know, when they took all the skilled trades type classes and courses and things out of schools, you were setting kids up who weren't already going to be elevated to a 2-year, 4-year institution, whether it be a PWI or HBCU or even a trade school. These kids now, they don't get that basic knowledge in school anymore. So you just make them students. They're just students, and they have their core classes, and then they're supposed to know which direction they really want to go when they get out of school. And you are going to be right at the end of that, because a kid's either going to know where they're going to go or they're not going to know where they're going to go. And a kid that doesn't know where he's going to go tends to get in trouble. The kid that knows where he wants to go, if he gets in trouble, it's just because he's just an overzealous, bratty kid. But what about that kid that went through 13 years of schooling and really has no formidable skills? They're going to get a diploma that gives them absolutely no avenue to get out here and do anything anymore. You're more likely to see them before they turn 21. But you're also going to have the empathy, because you saw what you were doing when you were a PTSO president. How is that? How do you make that balance going from being the PTSO president, civil rights legislator, to being that judge that, you know, because you said you're supposed to be a listener, but will you find yourself kind of taking over, because you're going to be presented with a prosecutor and with a defense attorney that won't know as much as you. So are you going to find yourself to the point where you're going to be like, you know what, in my chambers? I mean, what are you going to do there?
So you just asked me a lot of questions. I'm not sure which one I'm supposed to answer.
You answer what I told you I'm long-winded, Marla. Come on now.
I'll start with the last one and move towards the front. Here's the thing. I'm never going to assume that I know better or know more than people who come before me. That is never going to be my guiding line.
Okay.
I don't know where these people have walked before. I don't know for sure. So I am going to listen to everyone. But when we're talking about the schools, I do have an interesting eyesight into it, because I help students who are not getting the support for IEPs, kids who should have been diagnosed with disabilities and should have got help. My daughter, who's at U of M, we didn't know she had dyslexia until she was a senior. And I feel horrible about that, because I'm this kind of president. I mean, I do this, but she had taught herself how to read so well that until she started having to do the time tests, that it didn't show up. And then we had her tested, and she was like in the 8th percentile on some of her reading skills, able to get into U of M, but only because she was working her tush off the entire time. So I understand, like, we're missing things. We're not doing everything we're supposed to do. And one of the things that I'm proud of as being Skyline PTSO president is our emphasis on that. We made sure for the first time that we've given our counselors money so that students who didn't have backpacks or tampons or things that we just need them to be able to start the school year, they could have support. We're bringing in a therapy dog to try to to help with anxiety. Because you know what? When they're having those lockdown drills, it is terrifying to the kids, right? There's just a lot of pressure going on. We know there's a lot of discrimination and harassment and all these horrible things that, you know, happen throughout the world. It happens at school too.
Right.
So I do think I have a good understanding of that. But I will say this, one of the things I'm really proud of, and so especially Skyline. Skyline's known as the magnet school, right? If you want to be in the medical field, if you want to be an engineer, whatever, that's a school for you. But do you know that they actually have a home building program also? That every year there's students build an actual home from the ground up.
I did not. And let me ask you something here, because I know you obviously know Skyline A to Z. These are things that I've obviously talked to people about the other schools. You know, we don't discount or dismiss Skyline at all. But one of the things that they did with Skyline was they improved all the wrongs that they had with Pioneer and Huron. Okay. Pioneer, I said them first only because they came first, not because they are first. Huron's first. I went into Huron and where we're at, so you know all that. But they did with Skyline what I felt like they should have been doing with Huron and Pioneer, and they came in with those incremental resources and incremental skill-based courses and programs. And was that just through new ingenuity? I mean, can you answer to me, like, how did Skyline jump in and jump ahead with some of those curriculums and programs to where you had two sitting schools that had been here minimum 50 years already in the making, and nobody said anything before Skyline got to doing some things? Now you've got the new school leading the two older institutions with some of these things, because I had heard about it, but I thought that was kind of hooked up through Habitat. That's an actual program through Skyline.
I know our students are able to do it. I didn't even know about it until I was talking to Corey, our principal, and I was like, that's really cool. I'm glad that those are the opportunities, because we were talking about, like, what, let's say a student of Skyline doesn't want to go into magnets. Like, what if, just like you're saying, what if they want to go in trades? What are those opportunities? I literally wanted to know these questions, and I had a very good ability to ask the questions to him. And that's how I learned about it. But we need to make sure, because we need people to go into the trades. We need people who understand values of unions and in union jobs, because they are the lifeblood. You know, we need people who are going to be nurses. We need people at every single level. And not everyone wants to be a doctor. Not everyone wants to go to college. And that doesn't have anything to do with their value. They can be amazing, wonderful people in our community, being super happy in what they're doing if we help them get there and give them the skills that they need. But even someone who wants to be an electrician or a plumber, we need to make sure they know how to read. We need to make sure they have the fundamentals. And sometimes, well, I mean, there's students who are falling through the cracks, and I'm not going to say that there's always going to be a situation where we can, make sure there's no cracks, but we need to keep trying to make sure that less and less students are falling through the cracks. And, I'm speaking by Skyline because that's where my knowledge base is. But I mean, I've worked with other schools, and I try to work, behind the scenes, helping, and I have talked to other teachers in other schools about what's going on there. But we have some amazing schools in Washington County, and we have some things that could be better. You asked me also, how do I do it all? Like, because, Skyline PTSO is just one of the things I do. I'm on Association for Justice's executive board, one of the co-chairs for their amicus. They'll be getting at least one brief with my name on it this week on a Freedom of Information Act, because I'm really into transparency and accountability and supporting the Freedom of Information Act. But, I'm, like I said, I'm on the state bar's Courts and Civil Procedure and Representative Assembly and Jewish Family Services Board. And I mean, I can go on, and that's all we'll be doing. And you asked me a question, and I actually made myself sit down and think, because I could ask that question my entire career. How do you do so much? I think I'm really good at getting rid of the noise.
Okay.
I'm really good at saying, what do I need to do? I need to reach this goal. How do I do it? How do I find people who share my drive on this issue? You know, at Skyline, I have a great board. It's not just me. I'm not going to
Sure.
take all the credit,
Sure.
right? But making sure that they're motivated to get involved and that they feel valued is important. Um,
Can I stop you right there?
sure, of
When you
course.
say you have you've got a good team around you, is that a team of educators? Is that parents? Like where do you feel like you're strongest? Because there's parents, teachers, students. So where do you feel like your strength comes from? Does it come from the teachers? Does it come from the teachers? I'm sorry, it's come from the teachers, it comes from the parents, or it comes from the students. I mean, where is the strength in your PTSO? Because I think it needs to be modeled, to be honest, across the board, whether it be at the high school level, junior high school level, elementary school level, because we have a question that's really not on topic, and I respect anybody's questions or anybody that comes in here. It says, what is the Michigan government doing about the homelessness? Well, that's about my next video, and I don't know how they got into my head, because my actual next live without a guest is about talking about homelessness. But I think we stop homelessness if we can get kids right in school so they can make substantive livings, so they can have housing, jobs, cars. I think that's how we keep people from being homeless, because we've obviously shown people can go off to fight for this country and risk their lives, and they can come back here and not have a home. And I don't believe anybody that's ever went to any other soil and fought for this country, how they don't have a meal every time they desire one and a place to live. But that's the country we live in. We live in a really fucked up space to where we have people that go fight for us and defend our honor, but then they come back and they're laying in a tent. I have no filter for that. I really don't. And when someone asks a question about that, yeah, I'm deeply entrenched in homelessness. I see people on the street. Yeah, I don't help everybody, because I know there's some hustlers out there too. But a person that I know that has been on the street, I used to have people that were veterans that lived with me.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen this, and I'm just like, and I've heard the stories, and I'm thinking, how could this person have 1 tour, 2 tour, 3 tours in Vietnam and come back here and not have a place to live? And I'm not talking about at a shelter. I'm not talking about at some VA facility. I'm talking about real living quarters, a real home, and have a job. I mean, the government should be able to get this person a job. There should be a resource center to get veterans employment. They don't need just subsidy. They need employment, because that's what makes a man or a woman feel whole. They just don't want to be sitting around waiting for their check every month. So I totally respect that question. I appreciate that question. I just
I can
want
just
to get that out.
2 seconds about that. First of all, I think one of our problems in Washington County is a lack of affordable housing with Jewish Family Services, which people sometimes don't know. We're just like Catholic social services. We help everyone. It has nothing to do with religion, just based on our belief that you always welcome the stranger, that you're always there for your community and you lift everyone up. We struggle trying to find places for the refugees who are coming in, refugees that our government has promised that we will find them places to live, because there is a lack of affordable housing in Washington County. When it comes to our veterans, a lot of the problems has to do with the fact that we aren't giving the proper mental health support.
Okay.
Because yes, if they come back and they are mentally prepared to go to work, then we need to help them. But there's oftentimes people have some adjustment mentally, having gone through, some really horrible situations and being put in horrible situations where they are doing what they can to protect our rights. And we need to make sure that when they come back, we are supporting them with mental health support and helping them get to the point where they are able to go and work. So there's a lot of steps, because I have worked with a lot of veterans, and there are a lot of veterans I've worked with, and obviously I do civil rights, so who are not yet prepared to go back into the workforce, who have to go and have adjustments because they're still dealing with the horrors that they've dealt with. And let's be honest, the Veterans Administration is slow. It's hard to get your medical, care. I was helping someone who they have diabetes,
Sure.
obviously not from their tour duty, but as a veteran, they still get veteran services. He ends up losing, most of his leg.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought in because the ex-wife thinks that this is a reason that he should no longer be able to see his son.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because now when he comes back out, he will be in a place that is assisted living, right? Because now he has to learn how to walk with a prosthetic. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
a process. He's going to have to learn how to drive with a different leg. And so I had to go to court pro bono, so there was no charge, and explain, no, just because someone loses their leg doesn't mean affect their ability to be a good father.
Sure.
Right? So again, I think what happens is there's just so many things tied into it. You don't have affordable housing, so it's hard to get a house. You come back from your tour of duty and you have to go and adjust into a very different society, right?
Sure.
And then we need to be able to find work where sometimes people don't understand how what you've learned in the military and those skills, work into the local workforce.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's also a lot of learning from us who aren't, I'm not a veteran. I did not go that route.
Sure.
Understanding that, and I've learned somewhat through talking and helping, but I only, I didn't do. So, and I'm not going to even pretend I did. But there's just, it's one problem after another problem, but it's trying to get everyone to work together, because this is not something that's going to happen tomorrow, but we have to address all the different steps. We need to make sure that everyone, it's not even just starting at education. It starts at when people are born, right? That's
this is what I'm saying.
It starts, right?
We're talking about adults. I get it. But it really starts in school. It starts actually before school.
Before school, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Exactly. We have kids right now that are living in cars, and they're not living in cars by themselves. They're living in cars with their mothers and their fathers. I do a lot of my lives in shopping center parking lots. It's a very peaceful area. It's an open area. I can catch a signal. And if I do one early in the morning, I see families getting out of minivans, getting out of cars, a mother, a father, 1, 2, sometimes 3 children. They've been there all night. This is Washtenaw County, Black families. And these are people, these are people, these aren't vagrants. They're getting up and they're straightening up. Some of them, you can see some of the uniforms that they're literally going to work. The kids are going to be going to school. So How don't they have a place to live? So when people say that there's not affordable housing, we may just be talking about somebody who may be 100% subsidized, but I'm talking about somebody that actually works, 2 working incomes with multiple children, and we can't find them a place to live affordably. But then we have CEOs who, they have a salary of $1, but they get a bonus of 20 million a year. It doesn't make any sense. So the landscape is so screwed up around here, whether it be here or anywhere else around the country. That's what we've got to fix, because it doesn't matter how hard you work. See, we were fed that you work hard, you go to school, and you can make a good living. That's not true. There's professional people out here that are putting on a suit every day, and they're homeless, but they got to go perform, just like that guy who got out of his own bed in his own home. His car was parked in his garage, this, that, and the other. Yeah, fuck scraping your windows off because you got to go to work. You got to get all the snow off because you slept in your car outside.
So, and one of the things I think about, you were talking about people who have subsidies, but there's some people who could possibly, because they do have the job, and if they could get the subsidies, be able to get the housing, but they can't because sometime in their past they had a criminal conviction. And I know we're trying to expunge all those, but there's a lot of distrust. It's hard to go to people who do not trust the system and say, no, this time you can trust us. We're going to help you. And it's a barrier, right? And then the road to restoration, something else I've been working with and volunteering for, trying to make sure people get their driver's license back, right? Because without being able to drive, it's really hard to get to work. It's hard to get your food. It's hard to get the medical supplies you need, or to get to a doctor when you need to. So, I mean, I don't want to discount that there has been some strides made, but we need so much more. And
Absolutely.
I guess that's what I bring. You asked me, how am I going to do it every single day? It's because I'm going to take the little victories and understand that there's a bigger picture, and I'm going to take the little defeats, the big defeats even, and just like right now, why am I running? Like, how frustrated are we with the anger and distrust in our country, right? I don't know anyone who's getting along, really. Republicans, Democrats, progressives, Trump versus, Lincoln, Republicans, like, we're all just fighting and not focusing on what we all believe and what we all care about. And it'd be easy just to go and do my job and help the people I could help, or just to lose faith. But instead, I'm jumping into the fray and saying, yeah, I'm going to have people who don't like me, and there's going to be people who think I have too much energy and will want to do too much too quickly or whatever. But you can either give up, or you can say, I'm going to be part of the change.
Sure. And I appreciate that, and for anybody that says you have too much energy or you got too much to get up and go, I say fuck them anyway, because that lets me know that you don't have the fervor for people. You're only doing what you're doing probably for the compensation and the PowerPoints. But my big issue at this point, we've talked, and you've stated this word a few times during our conversation, restoration. And I don't know if you ever got a chance to because we were introduced by a third party, and I appreciate Ken bringing you to me so we could have this discussion. I speak on repair. I speak on recompense. I speak on restorative justice, but I speak on reparations for my people. My people are American freedmen. We are descendants of enslaved people. And we're different than just your Black American, okay? Or an African American, or anybody that comes here that has melanin in their skin, because our people were enslaved on this territory. You being an American Jewish woman, you understand in some cases, and we talked a little bit about my friend Jonathan, who I have multiple conversations with a year about the plight of his people, the plight of my people, and how we don't get along better. But it's not just us. They have done research, and there is actual factual information that anti-Black racism in this country has cost this country, I believe it's somewhere right around $16 trillion. Now, the mathematics of it all is basically showing how we are a bottom caste people, and we are perpetually at the bottom, no matter how hard we work, because we're not all at the bottom, but the median Black family in the United States is worth about $1,700. This is documented. And that's with everything you got. You throw everything into the living room, your car keys and everything, $1,700, where the median Black immigrant family is somewhere worth around $50,000. This is a person that came here anywhere between 1965 to yesterday. They are worth more than people who built this country, whose ancestors built this country. So when we speak about repair, we speak about restorative justice, we speak about reparations. And reparations can't just come through a few policies, a few bills, a few trinkets. They just had Slavery Remembrance Day. Well, I thought that was the 4th of July, because when this country became independent, we were still enslaved. I no longer celebrate Independence Day. I can't, in a good conscience, knowing at 1776 on July 4th, my people were still enslaved. Now, we can't celebrate June 19th, 1865, when we were free, but I can't celebrate 1776. We may strike up the grill, the kids may light off some fireworks, but I can't celebrate independence because my people weren't independent. And my people truly won't be free until we are repaid. And that's going to come by a bunch of policy and legislation, an absolute check. But the only way that we can really even this playing surface out is about balancing out the landscape of America. And right now, we're a bottom caste, and we're even being put beneath people that are illegally here. Now, I have no problem with somebody coming over, getting their paperwork right, and becoming a citizen of America. Now you are an immigrant. But if you are illegally here, if you illegally got here and you're illegally working here and you're legally living here, I have no love, because you know the system. So my job is to tell you, get your ass in line, get your paperwork right. I understand why you left that territory that you couldn't cut it in, but you don't get to come here and be in front of me. This administration has been hell-bent on making sure that people get into this country and become elevated for what? Hell, it takes me 16 years to get a driver's license, 18 years to get a voter registration card, and 21 years to drink legally. If you are 21 years of age, you can get all three of those things within 30 days. Within 30 days. How is that so that you make Americans wait 21 years to be fully vetted, but you can allow somebody to be here and for 30 days and they can have the same rights and privileges as me or any other American in this country? But that was just the long of it. The short of it.
I'm like, you keep throwing things out there, and I'll listen until it's time.
Until you what I want to know is, where do you stand on cash payments for descendants of American chattel slaves? Because we know what the Holocaust did, and there's been recompense not only on this soil but in other areas. But where do you stand, and how do you feel it will benefit Native Black Americans, American freedmen, in this whole grand scheme of things? Because the school to prison pipeline is going to be there and is going to stay there until we are elevated enough to where we can be substantive and beneficial in this community. We can't wait for every 1 out of every 1,000 LeBron James, 1 out of every 100,000, this person, that person, whatever. No, we're not trying to be there. We're trying to come up as a collective, as other factions of people have. So where do you stand on cash payments, policy and legislation change for descendants of American slaves as far as reparation goes?
So, I always have to be very careful on any issue that could possibly ever come in front of me. So let me answer it this way. I've already talked to you about how I believe that people's mental health and emotional well-being is valuable. And I don't see how raising everyone up and helping everyone be able to be successful is anything but a valiant, like that. I don't want to say goal. Goal sounds like but that should be where we should be going. Like that should be the plan here. And when you free someone and you just let them out there and they have no ability to succeed, then it's a problem. We have a society that's built on, if you take something that's mine, I have the right to have it back. We talked about the Holocaust. I have family members who had things stolen, and believe me, they believe they have the right to get that back.
Absolutely.
It's their families. And that may have been, 1943-ish, right? So almost a decade, 80 years. It's still theirs. It was taken wrongfully.
Sure.
When I think about, I mentioned I try to see past the noise. Sometimes I worry, like it's the word that people stop listening to you, not just you, but people, when they hear certain words, right? When they hear reparations or something like that, without understanding what is at issue and what is being discussed. The point is to make sure that we put people in equitable situations to succeed. And when we took things from them, we need to think about, how do we make them whole? We've done this many, many times. I mean, I'm not going to get into, too deep dive into it, but, they talk about how when people were freed, they gave them the first 30 days to buy property. But if they didn't have any money, that's not really helping anyone. That was part of reparations years and years ago. That's not true. That's not real. And so we need to do something. And I'm not sure that just because a wrong has been unrighted for years and years, that we discount that. And I don't see, and this is where I say with the noise, if you take away the word that seems to make people's heads explode, what is wrong with making sure that every child who is born in the United States has equitable ability to succeed? And why is it more important that we pay $30,000 a year to put someone in prison than use that $30,000 per year to help them succeed? And yes, there's some people who, there's a reason we have laws,
Mhm.
and there are reasons why we have criminal laws. So
Mhm.
I'm not talking about, I'm not defund the police. I would like them to learn more about de-escalation in their training and get more skills,
Mhm.
right? But we just need to change the way we see people and how
Well,
we value people.
right.
So without
I
saying how I would rule or what
sure,
I want to happen,
sure.
that's where my heart is I
Okay.
want to make sure everyone rises up.
And here's the thing. I have no problem with everybody rising up. But the problem with that is, the problem with that theory is, if you raise all tides, it doesn't lift all boats, because everybody doesn't have a boat.
Correct.
Native Black Americans don't have boats. We might have a raft, we might have a canoe, we might have a kayak, we might have a boat that is riddled with termites. That's the American system. See, and when we did have substantive communities, and we did have places and businesses and things like that we were burnt out of, that we were killed in, that we were ran out of by the government, those things need to come back first. You know, I mean, people are still fighting in Greenwood, Oklahoma, about being totally burned out. But that's just one area. That happened in every major city across this country with the US freeway system. You notice that they strategically ran our highway system through Black neighborhoods. They didn't run them through white neighborhoods. They ran them through Black neighborhoods. So we were automatically displaced, put somewhere where we weren't welcome. So now we got to start all over again. And when you are a civil rights litigator, I'm sorry, but the only reason civil rights exist is because of us. Civil rights doesn't exist because of the LGBTQIAP. Civil rights doesn't exist because of American Jews. Civil rights doesn't exist because of Asian Americans. Civil rights exist because of Black people. It was Black people that were getting tore up for hundreds of years, 246 years of free labor. Let's start there. And then we have another 156 years of systemic oppression. If they don't want to come and repair that, take the word reparations out of it. Repair, that's where reparations comes from. Repair us, fix us right where we are. Because even if white Americans stop today, and I don't believe white Americans are our only problem anymore, because per capita, they're not making more money than Indians and Asians in this country anymore. Okay. If white Americans stopped right now, it would still take us 200 years to catch up to you. If we just kept working as Black people and we didn't have systemic problems and systemic change happening to us on a daily basis, on a minute basis, it would take 200 years for us to catch up. So the government needs to stop, because they're going to have an implosion. You have to understand, we're not going to continue to allow people to come to this soil and step in front of us. And the government is creating that civil war mentality. I don't have anything against anybody that comes into this country and gets their paperwork right. I stated that earlier. But when the government systemically lets people come in here and you give them shoes, you give them housing, you give their kids schools to go to, and then you line them up with jobs where you've got Black Americans who have been standing, and we just had to stand by and let that happen, you're creating a civil war mentality. And you're putting us against them, and we don't have any disdain for them, but we have disdain for the way the government treats us. So where do you think that's going to end? They're building new school facilities in Ann Arbor right now. They're not talking about it, but they're building new school facilities, all because some of these communities, some of these neighborhoods are burgeoning. It's not more Black people coming in. Hell, it ain't any more white people coming in. It's more Asians coming in. It's more Latinos coming in. It's more Arabs coming in. So they're building more schools. You didn't build them and you didn't make them better when it was just Black and white people, but you're going to make them better because you are we are a sanctuary city. We're a sanctuary community. I think we might be even a sanctuary county. How can you do that in good conscience and think that people are still going to come out and vote or just be law-abiding citizens? You are creating a problem. This is a powder keg. And I don't know exactly how we have that same theory of rising tides raises all boats, because we know we can't swim. We can. It's not because we lack intel, because I'm saying a lot of us can swim, a lot of us can survive out here, but most of us can't. That's where my problem is. The people that can't do it. And I'm not just talking about veterans. I'm talking about the person that went to school for 8 years post high school and they're sleeping in their car, but they're called a manager at their job. How in the hell?
So Shannon, I just want to make sure that I'm very clear. So if I came on your show and I said, I agree with everything you say, and that I am very much in favor of reparations.
That would be a first. I know everybody doesn't agree with what I say. I understand.
Well, no, but I want this. I'm making a point here.
Sure.
I could actually disqualify myself from ever hearing those kinds of cases. Absolutely. So I hope that you understand that when I'm speaking, and I say I want people all to rise up, I have to make sure that I'm always promising to be impartial and fair.
Absolutely.
But also for me, one of my big words is compassionate, like you said, and equitable. So I'm definitely hearing what you're saying. I cannot, in good conscience, go that far, because as soon as I start giving people any absolutes, and I'm not saying that's why I'm not or am doing it, I take myself out of the ability to be able there to listen. And I'm here, and you've been talking, and I've been hearing what you're saying, and there's many points you make that are absolutely correct. Okay, if people can't swim, it doesn't help to have everyone's boats if they don't even have a boat. So you're right. We have so many things that need to be remedied, and we put people at such disadvantages, and so few people realize it. My heart still hurts when I look at the turnout at the primary, in our most blackest areas, right? Because they don't feel like their voice matters.
Yeah. And
that cannot be the message we keep giving people. And maybe my face is not the face that's going to go and make them feel like their voice is going to be heard, but I'm hoping they can see past the color of my skin to see the passion of my heart.
Sure. Because
that's what I look at for other people. I don't judge them based on how they look. I don't judge them based on their socioeconomic status or whether they belong to this party or that party. I search for what's good in them. I try to find the good. And work through that. Where are we on the same page? One of the things I'm very proud of, and you're right, we did not come from the same place, but a lot of my relatives, we didn't really come in my family. I think the earliest we were here is like 1904, maybe. I think one side's there and one's closer to the 12s or 18s.
Okay.
But, they talk about how they did walk during the civil rights movement, that they understood, partly because of what had happened in the Holocaust, that if you do not stand up with others who being persecuted and treated unfairly, that you could be next. Because they remember when people would not stand up for them and watch them die.
Absolutely.
And their family die. And I think that's something that really stays with me. I think I mentioned to you, I grew up, and maybe I didn't, it's hard because I talk to so many people right now. I grew up next to a Holocaust survivor. And the mother was not in the Holocaust, but the daughter was, because her husband was Jewish. And she thought she was, and I mean, technically, I guess it was better than what could have happened. She thought she was bribing the guards to keep her daughter alive. What she didn't know is that she was in one of the medical facilities where they were experimenting on the humans. And I saw her firsthand, her scars, where they had opened up her legs and taken rags full of gasoline and put in her legs and then re-sewn it up just to see what would happen.
Sure.
I think it's those kind of memories, like I said, throughout my life. I know you have to stand up, even if it's not about you.
Sure.
Even if I'm not the person who has been treated unfairly, even it's actually more important if I have the ability to use my voice to help those whose voice sometimes is not listened to. no
Right.
matter how high and how loud they scream.
Sure. And with that being said, so when I talk about repair, and I absolutely, like I said, I believe there's a bunch of policy and legislation, and I'm never going to be your data guy. I'm definitely more energetic, and I know enough to be able to talk about these things. But the people that have the data, you know, and I can bring them to you, I can send you links. You can listen for hours when you have the opportunity. But the main thing for me, you just spoke on something there, how they used her for experiments. When I talk about repair, I talk about certain items that we've had to deal with as Black Americans, you know, with predatory lending, and which still
Yeah.
happens to this day. And I know you've
Predatory
probably had to deal.
predatory,
Yeah.
yes, predatory in many industries.
When you have to understand what we've gone through dealing with banking, you know, from not only being rejected, but then being given an interest rate that's twice as high as the person that you have a better credit score than. I've said before, I don't believe we should pay an interest rate because of the history of predatory lending in this United States. That's one thing. Medicine. They built American medicine off of our bodies. They built the gynecology system in American medicine off of the Black woman's body. Nobody knew how the reproductive system worked way back hundreds of years ago, but they didn't take white women out of their homes. They took Black women out of the slave pens and they worked on them. Hell, when we needed just basic medical attention, we didn't go to a regular physician. We had to go to the doctors that worked on the horses and the cows and the livestock. You know, we've never been given fair treatment along with healthcare. Now, obviously, you probably know the most popular thing that's happened to us on this soil, where we were murdered if we learned how to read and write and count and spell. We were murdered just with the thought of us having the knowledge of learning how to read. So I don't believe we should pay for any education that would cost money. I'm talking about because we've built most of the PWIs on this soil. Anything that was built before 1865, I look at it as had to be built with slave labor. Show me some receipts that slaves didn't build Harvard, Yale, Brown. You can't, because they've already admitted. And Princeton, they've already admitted that slaves built those universities, and all around the country. Anything that was built before 1865, why would they have paid people to build these institutions when you have slave labor for free? And I just believe because we were discounted in such a way with some of these things through policy and legislation, just like you made them wrong, make them right. Because it's not just a check. You can't just give us a boatload of money, turn your back on us, because then you'll change the whole financial system and that money will be useless for us. We could have $1 million. You'd be like, you know what? You need $1,000,001 to buy this house. They could change the system because that's what they did. They were going to give us 40 acres and a mule and they turned ass on us. They were going to give us this, they were going to give us that, and they turned ass on us. No, we need a whole restructuring of the system. So reparations, yeah, it's so globally used now. I actually hate the word reparations itself because everybody's using it, but they need to repair Black Americans.
So I think one of the points that I really do hear you on is the different levels and how embedded it is and how we have so many different things that we need to look at. What I find frustrating is sometimes people's unwillingness to see the world through eyes that are different than theirs, to accept it, you know, instead of just trying to justify it, because it has to get fixed. We have to do better. We should never devalue or dehumanize or just push people down. And yes, you're right. If we lift everyone up at the same exact time in the same exact way, then we all just stay at the same level. I hear what you're saying there, and that is true. That is true. If I give every single person $1,000, we're all just the same exact place.
Right.
So there is value in what you're saying, and I like hearing from different people. I think that's also something I bring to the bench,
Mm-hmm.
is the willingness to say, I did not know that before. I learned something new today, and I'm a better person because of it. And not just be like, that's not my experience.
Sure.
So I don't think it really matters. Because it's not about my experience. It's about the person who's standing in any court, whether whoever the judge is. It's about that person's life.
Right.
At the end of the day, I'm going home to my family, hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that person is going to have to deal with the consequences of those rulings.
Mm-hmm.
And if you need to always remember how the magnitude of how you are changing people and changing their lives for good, sometimes for worse for others, and never take that. You should never feel like what you did was about you. I mean, I'm trying to figure out how to say this, but it's more like you should never feel good because you put someone in jail. You should never feel good because you told someone that they couldn't see their child or that they
Mm-hmm.
needed to have, structured time with parental control. You should never feel good about that. You may feel like it is the right thing to do in the circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start feeling nothing, then you're not doing justice.
Right. I appreciate your answers, and I just want to make sure that you understand. I know you didn't know some of the things that I might have just spoke on, or maybe globally you may have known some of them. So I wasn't really trying to rapid fire you on those things. It just where I am and where my heart is for my people, I have to first look out for them. But truly, when I'm looking out for my people first, people have to understand I'm looking out for all people, because I don't want my people to be subjected to such situations to where they do have to go put a gun in somebody's face or put a knife to somebody's neck or break into somebody's home or break into somebody's car because they don't have. So the main reason that I need repair for my people, it's not so we can just go rub elbows with white folks or rub elbows with anybody. We ain't interested in rubbing elbows. See, that gets us nowhere. That's all symbolism. I don't need to feel good about it. I need it to be good. So my biggest problem was when they throw these symbolic things out, and even with policy and legislation, you've got to put something behind that. It can't just be here. It can't be just in this state. It's got to be all 50 states. And if you don't abide by the law, you do what you've been doing to us for the last hundreds of years. Throw them in jail. I don't care if it's politicians. If you're an elected official and you say you're going to do something for a collective of people, if they vote for you and you don't do what you're supposed to do, you just don't get reelected. But if you do something against those people, you absolutely should go to jail. Purposely to systemically hold them down, that's criminal. Marla, that's criminal right there when you do something to absolutely purposely hold them down. Whether it be emotionally, whether it be mentally, physically, whatever, if you do that, that is criminal. And I think you should be held accountable for it. And I know you can't answer a lot of these things. I know you can't. I know you can't say, yeah, I get it. But this is where I am. This is where I am.
I want to make sure I address some of the comments. So if people have questions for me, I am always out and about. I have a website, marlaforjudge.org. I'm on Facebook, Marla Richelew. You can send me a message. You can email me at, I think it's Marla at marlaforjudge.org. Ask me questions. And
I just want to throw
right in the Facebook people be informed voters.
Hopefully it comes up here. I just put in any questions because there have been a couple questions. Right. I tried to address.
We have to wrap up because I do.
Yes, I went over. I told you I'd get you out of here in 60 minutes. I went over. So if there's a question, can I get a question asked? If they have one, if there's one asked, and then I'm gonna get Marla out of here. I'll get you out of here before 4:30 because I know I went over my time. We just got running. But I think the biggest thing for us, this was a great icebreaker. I definitely will be wanting to talk with you before the election. I'll also want to tag you on some of the other videos so you can understand really where a lot of the people who are going to be people in your community, what they're saying and what they're seeing, because you're an individual that's not afraid of being informed about things. I've seen that. I've learned that in the short time I've known
And
you.
we didn't talk about unemployment. I told you that I'm really concerned about that. I wanted to make sure that I talked.
Absolutely.
And I can't do it in the time we have left. But
No.
there's
How about we do this?
500,000 people who are,
Yes.
who are going to be impoverished if we do not fix what's going on with Michigan's unemployment. People who were told 100% that they were eligible, and years later, a year and a half, 2 years later, are now being asked to pay back money, more money than they could possibly pay back.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure that everyone knows how to get help and what to do and things like that, because we don't need.
And that is for the unemployment.
You don't want to be pushing anyone else down.
That's for the unemployment. That the overpayments that they're saying people are having to pay back. Is that correct? Is that what we were talking about?
Yes, I disagree perhaps with how it's being portrayed in the media. Okay. There's definitely those people who I would think engaged in possible white collar big fraud, right?
Okay.
But I'm talking about the individuals who are now being caught in that and are have to jump through hoop after hoop after hoop when they were entitled to the payments and being asked to pay back. And I mean, it's my understanding unemployment even has a suicide hotline, because so many people are being driven to huge depression and anxiety where they should not have to pay back any of this money. I don't think I've lost any. There may be one case when I've gone in front of an administrative law judge when you actually get the facts. And I've had over 1,000 people contact my office since last September. So, there's so many people caught up in this horrible situation where the system was just broken and so broken and then collapsed in on itself. And while we're trying to dig out of the situation, so many people are just getting caught in the rubble.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Aren't people actually already being garnished? Aren't there people out there that are being garnished already for that money that they...
This is a problem. So there is a judge who put an order in saying that if you were in the process, unemployment could not go and garnish you. So if you had a protest or whatever.
Okay.
However, they just amended their order that said it has to be timely. Now, here's the problem. If you mailed in your protest, it was actually impossible for it to be received timely. On the letter, it says you could do it. But if you didn't have a scanner, if you didn't have the computer, if you didn't have all the bells and whistles and understand the technology, which is not a great system, that you had to do it online for it to be received timely. Like it says on there, it says like, you may mail this in to this address. You may fax this in. But the problem is that our system was not built and we do not have enough employees to handle the volume of people. And from what I can tell, and obviously I'm not on site, they can't backdate. So it's not the day that they received it at unemployment. It's the day they put it into the system. So they may have had it there for 5 months, 6 months more. And now you're late, even though you timely did everything. And now they can garnish you because of the change in the court rule. Now, if you're eventually ruled to be timely, which you will be once you explain to the ALJ what happened,
right?
Then they can't do it. But like, there's a disconnect there. There's a huge disconnect. And it's important that people know that if you mail things in, if you fax things in, you need to go check your MyWham account, because most likely something's coming up.
Okay.
People think they go back to work. I don't need to check. I got the money. It's been 6 months. No, people are more and more being added into this nightmare. So I'm trying to make sure people know and they get ahead of it.
Okay, well, hush, because we're almost at 4:30 and I want to get you out of here. So what I'm going to do behind the scenes, I'm going to get information from you where people can actually hit a link or call a number and be able to post this. I'm a serial poster online, so I want to put people in touch with you so they can at least get the questions asked so you can answer them and redirect them, because I know that there's a ton of people out here that could be subjected to this stuff. And I don't want them to fall victim, because this is a part of our village. It's part of the way we work as a community. But I thank you for coming on today. I kept you over than I said that I was going to do, but I told you I talk a lot, so I did.
She did, and I apologize. I see the comments. Let her talk. Let her talk.
Yeah, they're on me. Oh, they're gonna cook me. They're gonna cook me later, so I ain't gonna worry about it.
I tell you, I'm going to listen to you if you come to my courtroom, and I'm interrupting you all the time. Then I'm not being true to my word.
Right.
So I appreciate that people may be frustrated that and I mentioned your questions had like 17 subparts on them, and it's hard to get all of them.
Right.
But I'm not afraid to answer questions. I'm happy to do so.
Well, I appreciate
you to learn and be wrong, because if you have a judge who always thinks they're right, then we got a problem.
No, and personally, I think, like I said, you're a perfect fit for this community. I just think people need to really understand your depth and how far you go as a civil rights litigator and where that's going to carry you through the bench. But we're going to talk more offline. The big thing for me was just to get this ice broken, because I wanted to bring you back at some point and we can talk specifically about unemployment, or we can talk specifically about certain things that are happening in our community, and then how they can probably be pushed forward outside of our area. But I'm most concerned about my village. I love it here. I've always loved it here. And I just need good people in the judicial system and law enforcement and whatnot. And I think you're going to be one of them. So congratulations on your candidacy. And we look forward to having you on the bench come New Year.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I appreciate you, Marla. We'll talk soon.
And thank you for everyone who watched our exchange. And
yeah, there's 3 or 4 people that watched the video, so I'll talk it over, and they're going to tell me how much I talked and cook me later. But I appreciate you. I'll bring you down, and we'll definitely chop it up some more soon. I appreciate you. And are you a Tiger fan, or is that just you just coordinated today with the cheer?
I'm just coordinating. I think I've mentioned my husband works for U of M athletics, so oftentimes you're going to see me there. But I went to state.
Okay.
So
we got static in the line here. Looks like we're about to disconnect. You said something. No, I thought you might have been fighting Illini. I didn't know if you were fighting Illini. Those are okay.
So I went to Indiana for law school, and I went to MSU for my undergrad, and then now everything about my life, it seems to be U of M, with my husband working there and my daughter going there. But no, I didn't mean to, but I coordinated with my nice gamer chair that my husband.
I saw that. There's nothing wrong with you got to coordinate. There's nothing wrong with that.
I didn't mean to, but it worked.
But we appreciate you, and we'll definitely talk soon. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
All right, have a good afternoon. Be safe.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, I was a little bumpy getting started there. Sorry about that, guys, because yesterday had me frazzled. So I appreciate anybody that watched this stream. I definitely overtalked. I definitely got excited because I knew she had the energy, and she was definitely willing to be she's definitely willing to be an ally to as much as she can on these things. But I know she has to stay in the middle of the road as a candidate, a political candidate, because it is politics. She's got to stay in the middle of the road in a lot of things, but I always have to make sure that everybody knows which direction I'm coming from. I appreciate everybody that was putting the questions in the chat, and I didn't get to them efficiently as I would have liked. Brother Trey, you said let her speak. I don't even know exactly when I was riding her over, but she's an over talker as well. So next time we'll have some symbols, or I'll have her put up like a church fan or whatever, or like an auction. And when she's ready to talk, because we are both over talkers, and because we've had some offline conversations, great offline conversations. But Marla Linderman Richelew, if you're in Washtenaw County, she's running for circuit court judge. And it's time to unseat who's up there, because I don't even know who her specific opponent is, but I do know that there needs to be some new energy in Washtenaw County. So I appreciate her coming on. Brother Ken, I appreciate you bringing Marla to me. We will definitely be talking more. But this is a great discussion. I believe she is, Ken. I believe she is. And I think going forward and being totally transparent, I don't need people to come in and be the status quo or be just one step above the status quo. I need them to understand the climate, and I need them to change the weather. That's basically where I'm at. Understand the climate and change the weather. Now, can one person change the weather? Absolutely not. It's going to take a team of individuals. I love the fact that she's on the PTSO over at Skyline. Lets me know that she's She's entrenched in the community. Her kids are here. I mean, it's not like she's just coming in and hitting the gavel. She's going to be a part of our community for many years to come. So, you know, family's family. I mean, we in Washtenaw County, it's our village. We need to take care of our people. But if you're doing the right things, you're going to get taken care of. If you're not doing the right thing, you're going to get taken care of. So I appreciate everybody. I'm not going to stay on here long, but I do want to acknowledge the individual who was that said something about homelessness. That's literally what I'll be talking about next on my next live. I have it already queued up, ready to go. It's important to me, you know, and I'll talk about why homelessness in Washtenaw County and across the country is important to me, you know, when I do that. But and then there was another comment that I wasn't quite sure because it didn't have anything to do with the content. Municipals refuse to call ICE on illegal aliens while mass incarceration. I totally get that. The always resist arrest initiative. I totally get what you're saying. It was a little off topic today. Always resist. But we can address those things as well. I mean, I want to continue to, if I see comments and you show the due diligence just to throw it in the chat room, I definitely want to be able to address it. It just wasn't a part of the content today. But you're indeed right. I mean, and as I told Marla, and I'll tell anybody, I have no problem with you as long as you got your paperwork right and you're doing the right things, or you're getting your paperwork right. But when you come in here and you live years and years and years and you're illegal, I can't call you an immigrant. You're not an immigrant at that point. You're illegal, and you don't get a status above illegal status. You're illegal. And if you got a reason to be here and you got rights and privileges to be here, that's one thing. But you just can't run through here and then be skipping the line, because that's what you're doing. If you're here illegally, you're skipping the line. And I see it that way. I'm not going to see it any differently. Hopefully nobody really ever tries to change that from me. But no, I appreciate all y'all being here. She is replacing a judge who is retiring. Okay, good deal. And we're glad to see them go. Thank you for your service. But new energy is going to be abound in Washtenaw County at the circuit court level. We've got great district court judges already in place, like Lorraine Washington, and then we're going to get a new circuit court judge who I think is going to be for the people, because she's worked for the people throughout these years. So that's a beautiful thing. She's replacing a judge. I'm glad you got that up there, Ken. And she is indeed the real deal. Oh, okay. So that's who her opponent is. Okay, I got you. Okay, she's going against Asley. I got you. No problem. Well, you know, should be, you know, a good race. Should be a good race. And you know, I believe the best lady will win. So I have no problem with even discussing down the line with Asley and see, you know, but you know, I put an invite out before. But she didn't see fit to come on the program when she was actually running for prosecutor. So she probably won't want to come on now. You know, people tend to run from my commentary, which is perfectly fine because I don't chase people. So I appreciate Marla, Linderman, Richelew for coming on. I appreciate anybody who sat in, listened to the discussion, or if you're catching this on the playback, we appreciate you. One love.